Okay, hello everyone. I am here with Suzanne Stone,
Hello.
Moon of Hyldemoer Herbals, and we're going to talk about her herbal forecast that corresponds to my astrological forecast for October 2018. It's beautiful outside. Where we are in Maine, the leaves are starting to go completely crazy. It's maybe 3/4 changed colors and a quarter green still, so we have some time to go, but it's starting to get completely mad outside. It feels like we're inside of a giant pumpkin.
Yeah, it's the dangerous driving time where most people aren't even paying attention to the road.
Yeah, I definitely have seen people just swerving all over the place. Which is funny because for people that aren't around here, we had the year before last, we had a mast year. So there was an insane amount of acorns. And everyone was once everyone started to notice that, we're like, what is going on with these acorns? And I guess it happens about every 8 years, which is interesting because it's kind of on the Venus retrograde cycle. Mm-hmm. And then infertility, yeah, totally. And then so lo and behold, a year and a half later, we have an insane population boom in squirrels. And so, like, not only are the leaves madness, and people are swerving all over the road, and there's like a Venus retrograde tailed on the end of like a Mars retrograde, and everything else. But there's just like there's squirrels climbing all over the house. They're laughing. They're like, I think like Bonnie got hit with an acorn the other day. The dog is just like, completely out of her Google-eyed.
Full of squirrels.
Yeah, the dog is filled with squirrels. Fat. Yeah, the dog is full of squirrels, and the squirrels are full of acorns.
Yeah,
the acorns are full of worms, and we're all in a giant Halloween pumpkin.
Do we have to talk about anything else?
Yeah, I think we're done. Yeah, that was actually all a sly metaphor. But no, we do have to talk about Venus retrograde. So, speaking of which, so Venus turned retrograde. She stationed retrograde on October 5th at 10 and change Scorpio, which is interesting because that puts her square to Mars's station of 9 and change Aquarius. And so the tales are intertwined. The narrative, like, starting with the narrative of like what we did differently this year, how we like maybe had a really hard time doing something new, and it took way more energy than it should have, and it maybe had us thinking like, maybe I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to do that anymore, or I'm not going to do that again. But now as Venus is going retrograde, we're starting to think like, well, there are things I liked about that, and there's also things that are missing that I used to derive pleasure from the past that I want to reinstall and maybe combine with the radical updates of the summer that had our head spinning. So kind of tying our past into our present, into our future, seems a lot of what's going on. And with the Venus part of it is really drilling down and going deep, and mythologically it certainly relates to the cycle of Inanna going to the underworld to find her lost love, her husband, who and facing her sister, who's like her dark side, Rishkagal, and getting like, that's where the dance of the seven veils comes from, where she removes a veil at each gate, and so she's stripped down to her core, and she's killed and she dies, but then she later gets revived and she can leave the underworld. But the deal is that her husband has to spend at least a portion of a time there from then on. So it's kind of this reclamation of love, and then a re-equalizing afterwards, which is definitely suited to this retrograde, where it resolves in Libra. And we'll talk more about that later, but just kind of giving some context for what we're talking about. And so what herbs were you thinking for dealing with the retrograde in general?
Well, for the retrograde in general, just thinking of nourishing our Venus selves. of course, because it's a little bit of a hard situation. It's kind of exiled for Venus. It's not the most comfortable spot for Venus to be in Scorpio, although it's in a very important spot. So just rose, I think, is, of course, one of the tops because of rose's thorns, as well as the opening of the petals and the nourishing of the heart, and of self-worth. So I think carrying some rose thorns, nourishing yourself with different rose teas, baths, pictures, is pretty important right now, as well as calling on our brambles, blackberry and raspberry, both Venus herbs, both really nourishing to our reproductive systems, all peoples. So, and also Scorpio rules our reproductive organs. Also that protection that blackberry and raspberry have. Often people would crawl through like a circle of blackberry thorns, about maybe like 3 or 7 times to get over an illness, going through that portal of of bramble.
Wow. Yeah, kind of like a scraping it away.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting in a couple different ways. It reminds me of some things that I just thought of just when you were laying down thorns in general. Is I had started preparing to make what is commonly called like the witch bottle. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like for a client, which if people don't know what I'm talking about, you can look it up. There's a lot of spells for this. It's like generally falls into like a hoodoo conjure practice, but antecedents of it go further back into Europe, and it's kind of just like the wildly famous jar filled with broken glass and pins and nails that you put around to collect malevolent spirits and also illness and ill intentions and the evil eye, any kind of bad mojo that's taking place. It's kind of like we'll collect it in this bottle and then you can go dispose of it or get rid of it. It's kind of like that like box that they stomp on in Ghostbusters and like suck the ghost into, like, and of course there's like ritual procedure and protocol around how you operate it. And so if anyone wants to pursue it, there's a really good video tutorial by Balthazar Conjure. I'm not saying that whole like, I can't remember his whole information, but if you just look up Balthazar Conjure Witch Bottle on YouTube, it'll all come up. But anyway, I was trying to make one with like natural ingredients because the particular working that I had to dispense it into a river, and I didn't want to just like go and dump like nails and broken glass and ink into the river, So I had collected a bunch of rose thorns and a bunch of thistle and anything thorny to like fill the jar, and also like black sesame paste and soot and coal and things like that, but what you're saying about like carrying roses reminded me of like that it can collect all the thorniness that's possible that's going on in the season,
right?
And also like what you were saying about going through the blackberry was like almost a similar procedure. Like you go through the blackberry bramble and it grabs all your sickness, and then you walk out healthy and clean, So, I mean, people could, it might be worth building one of these bottles and doing a working like this, like for the season, as like stuff is going to get churned up. Like, so you can carry rose thorns around with you and carry similar things around with you to grab stuff, but you also could have a collecting station that just naturally gathers all the stuff that's going to get like coughed up. The blackberry is also interesting as September 29th was the feast of Saint Michael, and one thing I noticed about that day is that it's supposed to be the day that Saint Michael banished Satan out of heaven, that struck him down. And when he landed to earth, where he was going to become, Satan is the ruler of the earth, right? Because of this reason. When he struck him down, he landed into blackberry brambles. And so on Michaelmas, it's like the last day you're supposed to eat blackberries for the year.
Right.
Which, so I went and picked the couple blackberries I could find, but they were almost completely brown and dry, just like empty seed pods. But I ate a couple of those, like, on the day. There wasn't enough to really bake a scone, but, but yeah, you also talk about pomegranate seeds.
Yeah. I've just been really drawn to red berries, kind of the fall red berries. This time of year, it feels like thinking, of course, about Persephone with the 6 pomegranate seeds. But they just feel like Venusian color can be, of course, be red. And then carrying these beautiful kind of jeweled seeds of the season with you as protection and reminder and remembrance of coming back from the underworld. So like Schisandra, pomegranate, hawthorn, rowanberry, any of these red berries or seeds, I think at this time of year, or during this Venus retrograde, I think are important to carry or have on one's altar or put in your witch's bottle.
Yeah, I thought this is really good. And also that in general, there's so much red right now, like where it's rare, like in the height of summer, everything's green. There's like, and we get waves of yellow flowers and waves of purple flowers. But when you see red, like what is that flower that grows along rivers? Is it Indian paintbrush is its folk name? Do you know what I'm talking about?
There is an Indian paintbrush.
Is
it the hawkweed?
Is it scarlet red? Or am I thinking about something else?
There's an Indian paintbrush on the west coast that's bright red.
Oh, I don't see it very often, but there's one brook
Maybe
that feeds into like is it lobelia?
Cardinal flower?
Yeah, I'll have to go see. But anyway, it's like, I see it only in this one place, in this brook that feeds into this pond system, and right at this bridge that you walk over on the trail, and it's like, it surprises me every time, because it's like in that height of summer, it's like everything's green, or you get like the yellow or purple flower colors, and then maybe with like horticulture you get a couple other colors, but you never see this like scarlet red color in nature. Like when you see a cardinal, it's so surprising, But right now there's like half of the landscape, at least in New England, is bright red.
Yeah. I forgot to mention sumac berries, and then the sumac leaves are bright red. And then just like
totally.
Everything is just
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Is like with this, what the berry, like your suggestion of collecting the berries made me think of is like also like sumac leaves and maple leaves and like, and it that activity will like naturally pull you towards swamps, because that's where things turn red like the quickest, and the brightest, which kind of makes me think of like the getting in touch with like what Venus is doing, and like getting down and dirty and getting nasty. You know? Like,
I think of Scorpio being really swampy, like that.
Yeah, me too.
Water that just is still.
Yeah,
and it's just like murky, but there's so much depth and life and transformation going on in that area.
Yeah, it's like where amphibians like to be.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're under there somehow, or like they're some sort of a continuity of their life still exists. Like you hear the frogs in the spring, and then you forget about them. You see them throughout the summer, and then you're like during the fall and the winter, you're like, where are those guys? But then they just bloom and blossom and reproduce again in the spring. So
they're incredible. Yeah,
they're in there in the muck somewhere. Yeah, totally. And that, I thought that really reflected that underworld journey as well.
Yeah.
And so like one thing we were saying in the other forecast, the regular show that we did, and we had Mallory Voudoise on. And she was talking about like making sure that you journal through this period, because it's about a change of our tastes and an alteration and recontextualization and of what we truly love, and I was saying not just like what we love, but what gets us off. Like you're like, oh, I love this movie, but it doesn't, it's not enough or whatever. Like it's like what really like just does it for you, and like finding that again and reinstalling it. But yes, journaling will help like find that if we try to like put all of our emotions into words, because we could easily be like just go through a period of emotionality that you're like, oh, that was intense, I'm glad it's over, I'm glad it subsided, you know, but that there's information to collect here,
Yeah.
you know, and
I think
that,
Jupiter probably would be really helpful with that, since
yeah,
Jupiter's been in
totally,
Scorpio
absolutely,
for almost a year.
yeah, yeah. Jupiter is in a sign for about 13 months. So
Okay.
went in October, and it's gonna enter Sagittarius on November 8th.
So yeah, I've been accessing that kind of Jupiter, and they're both benefic. So
Yeah,
you know, that benefic underworld conversation
totally.
of like the wisdom of Jupiter being like expanding and delving so deep.
Yeah, and that I was thinking about the sumac with that like it's so expansive. Like I was like, why is sumac Jupiter? It's like has these like kind of long, like not sharp but long pointy leaves that are kind of they're almost like bird leaves, you know. And then
Yeah.
like the horns are almost like owl horns. It's like the wise owl, you know. And then, but in general, as like the way it, if you sumac can take over and it just expands and expands in like in a property or whatever in an area, and it like goes underground. It like it passes through like there's like no obstacle possible, you know. And there's a lot of space in between. If you go and look beyond the leaves at like what the grove of sumac is doing, it's like almost all air and empty space. So when the wind blows it, it's like this undulating, like amorphous mass, you know, like that will like tomorrow will be bigger than yesterday, you know, like
yeah. It's almost like Jupiter in Scorpio.
Yeah, totally.
Because it's also loves wet. You know, you'll see it in really swampy areas. I mean, you'll see it just on the side of the road and anywhere, but it loves wet.
And there's obvious like
stands.
phallic connotation.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Like, it has like the you know, the arrow coming off the circle of Scorpio. You know.
Yeah, it always reminds me of vultures too. It just feels like these like transformers of life.
Yeah, totally. And it's native to this area, so that's weird because it looks like tropical and crazy, and you're like, how does this fit in with firs and pines and birches? You know, but like it's you know, it's old from here. Yeah, so that was really interesting. So journaling through the period, and then also I think journeying, you know.
Yes.
Journeying and journaling, and there's like you can hit these specific dates where there's certain, and we'll get into that and what those are, but you can use, like as you're saying, Persephone as your psychopomp, as your this is like where Venus becomes your psychopomp and is going to give you like really intimate information about like emotions and about pleasure and intimacy, and what you really want, what you're really like horny for, you know. And so and just making sure you're in touch with that, like that erotic level, you know. And so it's super underworld. Everything points to the underworld in these configurations, and you know, on this show we love the underworld, and probably all of our listeners are down with that, so it's not a problem. We can just kind of blaze right through with like just get your hook up with Persephone, get your thorns on hand, and just like go deep, you know.
Yeah, and you can journey with any of these plants too, and I think journeying with these red jeweled berries is really great as well.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's guides.
Yeah, I do that every once in a while, but I have like a few plants that I call on in that capacity, but I forget about it. I have you know, a number of pretty solidified spirit relationships, and then I forget like that you can just like grab the hand of a plant and just go. You know?
Yeah. And then I also just mentioned Our Lady's Mantle, Camilla mollis. I've mentioned before about another rose family Venus plant that her mantle is really kind of made of all these different hearts that are formed together into a mantle or a cloak, invisibility cloak. So that's a great ally at this time. Also kind of just like the astringing, the kind of holding together, and kind of like holding together what is needed but purging what is not.
Yeah, that's definitely what we're up to right now.
And then periwinkle, another Venusian ally, Vinca major or minor. Beautiful periwinkle blue flowers, the light blue flowers. In Italian, it's called Centocchio, or 100 Eyes. It's also the flower of death, and so it's often given to graves of children. It's also in Germany, it's the flower of immortality. And it's also a fertility herb, so a lot of times after people have been married or had some kind of union, people will plant vinca or periwinkle around. It's kind of a fertility, so it could be like creativity. Fertility always for me is about creation in whatever form that is. It's also been a binding herb, and strengthens the inner eye. Has been used for love filters.
And also for to keep away nightmares, you said, right?
As well.
Which I was thinking that's like, there's plenty of red flags here for super magical herb, but always when you see like, this keeps away nightmares, it basically is like explicitly saying like, this keeps away demons, and then invisibility, vision, like inner eye, even fertility, or that whole list is like, certainly underworld connotations, like
exactly.
Invisibility. Well, invisibility is lady's mantle, right?
Yeah.
The cloak of invisibility.
Yeah.
But both periwinkle and lady's mantle having the prerequisites for plants you're going to take into the underworld with you. Invisibility meaning like, it means like you can go about and do your business unnoticed. Like if you need to go collect graveyard dirt and you just don't want anyone to notice what you're doing, that's definitely a form of invisibility, that people aren't just going to really see, like pay attention to you, but also that it's when you enter the spirit world or the underworld, or even the dream world, that you just may move about unharassed. That it's not like you open the hatch and the light from the manifest world just blares into the spirit world, and they all immediately take notice and just like zoom at you, and the plethora of tricksters, just immediately gets, and kind of vampires gets going on you like right off the bat, and it's just even if you're good at and you have techniques to banish them and say, like, get away from me, get out of here. It's inconvenient, to get surrounded.
Right.
Anyway, so yeah, these two herbs sound great for this process that we're going to go through. I had one other point, but I can't remember. But yeah, sounds good.
Then I was thinking, as Venus visits the underworld, we'll need some clearing herbs, just like, we'll be meeting a lot of things that we really need to meet. We'll be realizing like what we want to purge, as we mentioned before. So calendula, cleavers, and red root are three excellent kind of lymph clearers in our body. And our lymph is, of course, that part of our body that clears the toxins, that which we don't need in our bodies. So they might be good to have on hand even as Venus exits Scorpio. Might even be good to take then. Yeah,
I thought this is great because there's certainly a need, and you see this in a lot of traditions that work with hot spirits or partake in moving about the spirit realm. The need to cleanse after you come back from the other world. That like you're like, okay, what you did in like, from scientific terms, is maybe you just like lied on your floor for like an hour and a half, but you were out there moving around, and then you came back to your body, and things might have followed you, and that to cleanse yourself, that could be with baths or with other herbal waters, and stuff that you prepare, or stuff that you just prepare on site, and then like asperging the area and kind of re-blessing it and consecrating it and burning herbs and clearing it out, like burning juniper or things like that. And casting salt over your shoulder. That's where that,
right.
And that's, you hear in traditions, and I feel like I've talked to clients who've definitely brought this up. I've experienced it myself some, but I've definitely like had clients that had spirit attack situations, and they felt like it was directly targeting their organs. and I've read that in other traditions, like in African traditional religions and diasporic traditions, like that the way a spirit will hold on to you to possess you is like it'll like get on your back and like grab onto your organs from behind, you know? And and so it's interesting to think about, like, when you're doing all this cleansing after you come back from your journeying sessions, to not just like you can like clean the surface of your body and clean the space, but also like you're saying, clearing out your lymph nodes and you know that whole endocrine system. You know, like if you look at like a diagram of where the chakras are, they overlay pretty clearly on like endocrine organs. You know, that like when we're like using that energetic system of our body to do things that and we're interacting with other spirits, that's where they could kind of maybe influence or store themselves, and that we can like extend our cleaning after coming back from journeying, pathworking, whatever you call it, to just like even just taking a tincture of like calendula, cleavers, and red root, you know.
Yeah, and I just took a calendula bath recently. It's just put the flowers in your bath water, even if they're dry flowers, I might reconstitute a little bit. And cleavers infusion makes an amazing foot bath, like just for clearing that kind of your feet. After that, it really like stimulates everything, and you feel like you have brand new feet afterwards.
Wow, cool! I love the idea of brand new feet. Yeah. And that's like in the grimoires, you see that it's like, oh, and you're going to have to take a bath before you do this procedure, and if you're not going to take a full on bath, you're definitely just make sure to wash your face, your hands, and your feet.
Yeah,
you know, and then that's really interesting for when if you're not doing a full working, and maybe you're like, you have workings you do every day, and you're not like going to waste like gallons and gallons of water, but like you're like, you can touch base with your face, your hands, and your feet. And then even in, there's certain like kind of physical gestures that you do in working with Hecate that you see in the PGM, where you have to bend down and touch your feet, and sandals is a thing for her, you know? So why not pay attention to those body parts like before and after, you know, rather than, you know, not just doing things to get ready, but also doing things to like return from where you went.
Right. Yeah. Have it ready.
Yeah. 'Cause it's like kind of like if we're going to the swamp, we're going to want to wear our like muck boots, you know, and then we're going to want to clean them up, like spray them off after, you know?
Exactly.
We don't want to track mud back into the house.
No.
Unless you're real freaky, you know?
Unless you live in a mud house.
Totally. Yeah. So then we're talking more Jupiter. Other than sumac, was there anything else that was speaking Jupiter to you?
I mean, hyssop is one of my favorite Jupiterian allies, as well as nutmeg and dandelion. Whenever I think about Jupiter, I think about those. I mean, some of our tap roots might be really good here. I didn't even write them. Right.
Yeah. I think you did. You mentioned a root somewhere, and yeah, it does make sense. Like tapping in, you know, to the underworld.
Yeah. Like dandelion, burdock, and yellow dock, all great. I think they're all Jupiterian.
Yeah.
On some level, and all deep tap roots that bring up minerals, that bring up information. When we take them for long periods of time in our body, it brings up things in our body that have just been there for a long time that we don't need. It just helps to break that apart. It's this amazing dynamic accumulators, I think they're called in permaculture.
Yeah, I think that's kind of exactly what Jupiter and Scorpio has been doing for the past year. And there's one event in here. I don't think we're there yet, but that the Mercury Jupiter conjunction.
That comes.
We'll talk about it when we arrive there. But I like that you wrote here. These red berries and vinegar for this red elixir of life understands what it is to be in life, and at the same time hold death's hand or paw
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. We're all like, it could be a paw or even a hoof.
Yeah, definitely a hoof. I could have kept going. Wing.
Right. Wing, yeah, death's wing, yeah. Yeah. Like whatever, like, choose your own appendage.
But Sumac just feels like that, like really
Oh, yeah, for sure.
understands life and death so fully that it's almost like a death doula. It's just this beautiful entity that has the exuberance of life because it understands death so well.
And I love it as a plant, like aesthetically and relationship wise, but I also like, it frustrates me to no end and I hate it and I have to like cut it back all the time because it's always like fucking shit up and taking over.
Right.
But it doesn't even care.
No.
It's like whatever, kill me.
You can't.
You can't. Yeah, like so yeah, you can't kill. Yeah, so the new moon in Libra, what are you thinking?
New moon in Libra.
October 8th.
Yeah, I was thinking about oaks. I'm thinking of a balance of Libra because this is really not going to be a very balancing moon, even though it feels like it kind of should be. So I think the oaks, having people say it has the same amount of roots below the ground as branches above the ground, so the most balanced tree. So it's always good to call upon for balance. I said lavender infused honey, poppy seeds, pomegranate. Of course, this is Hecate's time as well. So I've been sewing a lot of rowan and hawthorn and rose hip garlands this time of year. I think they make great offerings for Hecate.
Yeah, that's a good point because she obviously has her, you see in literature about her in antiquity, like, these are her herbs and this is how you make her incense. So that like kind of like plant project thing is like jives with her. And then sometimes you're like, oh yeah, it makes sense to give these plants to lay them at the feet of this deity, but sometimes you feel a little cheap. Like you're like, oh, I just went and just plucked this and gave it to them. Like they're like, oh great, yeah.
Yeah,
like,
put some energy into it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that like it makes it devotional to make it into what were you saying, garlands or
just almost like rosaries.
Rosaries,
just like whatever number seems suitable and.
Yeah, like I know some people like Hecka do like 100 for Hecate, and some or like systems of threes or etc.
Yeah. And then of course, I mean, I love rowan at this time of year. It's incredible. It's like these tiny little pumpkins hanging from these trees all over.
Yeah.
They're just gorgeous. And everyone, like at the time of year, they're like, "What is this?" No one really knows what it is.
Yeah, can you talk more about rowan's properties and what it?
Yeah, it's also called mountain ash. There's native rowan to North America as well as native to Eurasia.
Are they different?
Different varieties, but they can be used. They're different species, but the same genus, but they can be used interchangeably.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, the berries are amazing. They have like this indent, this 5-pointed indent at the bottom of them. So it really kind of tells to the humanity, the pentacle, that kind of, it's a really human protecting.
And definitely Venus's story, like the 5 points of the zodiac that she hits in her retrogrades.
Right, and Venus flowers often have 5 petals, like the rose family.
Yeah, right, totally.
But it's amazing vitamin C. So much vitamin C, in fact, that if you eat them raw, it's too much. It's just like you end up spitting them out. It's like, it's so beyond sour. And it has parasorbic acid in it. And it needs to be heated or frozen in order to change it into sorbic acid, which is what is better for our bodies.
Well, heated or frozen.
Yeah, so you just need that breakdown of cell structure.
Yeah.
To kind of break apart that.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah. So you can freeze them. After a frost is a really good time to also harvest rowan berries.
We'll get that opportunity. Like a lot of people will. Or up here we will.
Up here, probably around the 24th we might get it for the full moon.
It just the full moon, right? Totally, that's when it happens. Yeah. But we got like 34 the other night or something.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel 34.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it didn't.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
they're
Sorry.
wonderful for digestion, respiratory.
You're going like rural villager for a second.
It's where we live.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Most plants that are helpful for the digestion are also helpful for the respiratory system. When we were born, our respiratory and digestive system were really more connected
Oh, wow.
in a way. So a lot of times they maybe think that maybe that's why so many herbs that are helpful for respiratory are also for digestion.
Oh, interesting.
Because I find that over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting then, like in that state, it's almost like our planets are conjunct to begin or something.
Yeah.
You know, like where Mercury is like down in like Mars's territory or something, you know? Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. But I love, rowan just... I always just knock on people's door and harvest and ask them to harvest from their trees.
And like magically with rowan?
Magically, super protecting. One of the most protecting plant. And then there's plants called the flying rowan. It's a rowan berry that maybe a seed has dropped inside of an old tree, and it starts growing up inside of an old tree or grows up inside of a living tree.
Wow.
And that's a flying rowan, and that's the most magical rowan there is.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Like in like a hollow or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people have seen them growing out of live trees as well.
Wow. Yeah, maybe out of like maples. You know, like how like a tree will grow out of like the like crotch of a big old maple, you know? Yeah, you gave me like a string of rowan last time we met, and I have a place that I've always put like whatever I bring home, like my keys, my phone, my wallet, like whatever I gathered that day. And I kind of like, it's almost like a mini altar it's become, where it's like, okay, I've just brought this in the house, or I keep talismans in my wallet, you know, like, so I keep it in this kind of like cleaning, charging zone. And I made that ring of rowan berries to perfect. Just like, like every time I come in the house, I just put my phone in my wallet and whatever else, like the mail or whatever, like in that like circle of rowan for the time that it just like hangs out in the house, you know? That's
perfect. Yeah. It's so protecting to have around your home.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful tree.
So, rowan, hawthorn, and
hibiscus. I love hibiscus so much. I've been growing my hibiscus in my garden this year, and the flowers are just so dramatic. And they actually grow up here in Maine. They overwinter.
Oh, wow!
And they come up with this exuberance. But they blossom like in late August here, which they blossom much earlier everywhere else. But that red, it just makes everything. I'm just really attracted to red right now. I mean, it's kind of a common thing in my life. But,
right.
But yeah, having red drinks, and hibiscus just does that, and that astringing, that digestive health, that just like heart healing. It's just the combination. I love combining those.
Yeah, this new moon looks really interesting because it's at 15 degrees Libra. And so that's like right where you get the beginning of what they call the Via Combusta, or the fiery way. And it's because it's 15 degrees Libra to 15 degrees Scorpio. And that's where both the sun and the moon find their falls. The sun, the sun is exalted in Aries, so it's in fall in Libra.
Yeah.
And the moon is exalted in Taurus, so it's in fall in Scorpio. So that like kind of middle section that spans the two. Mm-hmm. And if you look to the sky, the Via Combusta is filled with crows and shepherds, and it was really reminding me of like, if anyone's familiar with like the Irish epic poem, the Táin Bó Cúailnge. I mean, if anyone speaks Irish out there, they like totally just like hit the computer speaker with like a club or something, But like the Táin is which is again, I'm probably going to screw up, but the story of Cuchulainn. And the cattle raid, where it's complicated, but look into the story. Cuchulainn has to like take on the whole like kingdom of Ulster, single-handedly, basically. And there's a reason that this all happens that starts with these two swine shepherds, these swine herds, and they. It's where you get like later, or like concurrently in the Arthurian stuff with and she turned into a spider and he turned into like a hare, and then they turn into greyhounds and they're chasing each other in that magical battle of shape-shifting people, like where it's like the Disney, like the witch and the wizard or whatever, but when in the Toyne it's two swineherds that are shamans, and they like get the Morrigan or the Morrigu, kind of like puts this competition in their mind, and she like is a crow that shows up and like speaks this kind of instigatory kind of like shit talking to them, and it gets out of control. They change back and forth into all these creatures, and the repercussions of their epic battle where they're just constantly killing each other and being reborn as these different creatures, like is kind of the is what makes the whole action of the Toyne happen. And then the Morrigan shows up several times throughout the Toyne and kind of like re-instigates certain action, like starts shit. And it's an interesting figure, that it's very much like Hera and Heracles, who became Hercules, like that, like, and like Heracles means like the joy of Hera, like it's like he's her plaything, making him do all these trials. It's similar with Cuchulainn and the Morrigan in a way. And so in right at like 13 degrees Libra is the star Algorab, which is a star in the constellation of Corvus, the crow, and it's the ends of the feathers on the wing of the crow, and it has this connotation of evil wind or whispers or like rumors and gossip or being able to speak curses or to like to say hexes or to like send malefica, but also divination, because you're being able to like hear the whispers. And if you ever see a big crow or raven fly overhead, you hear that like flapping of the wings, and so that's like the kind of the evil wind of the end of the wings of a bird that's associated with death and associated with Saturn sowing strife. And it's in this time where like the sun and the moon are compromised or going into their fall. And it's like Libra is about like others and the other, and Saturn and Scorpio is about like intensity and the underworld and the depths and desire and primal drives. So I was thinking a lot about this moon. I was like, it's this kind of like, and the new moons of course are Hecate's time, that it's this kind of like instigatory like initiation moment, like it's kind of like, but it's initiation into something challenging, like an initiation into like, be like, okay, I'm going to make this pact with this spirit, like, even though I'm going to have to walk this hard line, or something along those lines, I'm going to like initiate this. It's like, okay, I'm going to initiate myself into facing this or taking this on, or, and so like divination can be done there as well. Be like, I'm gonna like initiate and throw some sortilege and see what the bones say about what my initiation experience is going to be all about. Like, like I'm going to sign the paper and then I'm going to throw some tarot and see like, I'm already signed up. What's going to happen? You know? So I don't know. It's a really, I found it to be really interesting, and I really liked what you were saying about oak for there, because it was really reminding me of the episode in the Argonautica, like in Jason and the Argonauts, when Jason and Medea do that like Hecate evocation, and she arrives and she's kind of just like this in her like multi-form, all-encompassing like serpent and vine. And I don't know if they specify oaks, but it's like all the like roots are there in the earth and like the branches, and it just made me think these kind of like crazy Mediterranean oaks, like just unfurling with serpents and that kind of like scorpionic unfolding, so it's like, if that's the seat of that kind of emanation of multiform Hecate at that time, kind of like, we're all going to the underworld with Venus, but in a sense, like the underworld is coming up into like our world as well.
Right.
You know.
Exactly. I like that a lot.
So sorry, big tangent there, but I just love.
Yeah.
I love the Via Combusta is always like you'll see astrological traditional texts be like, and this area is no good. It's shit. It's like just bad, you know. But it for witchcraft, you know, it has a lot of potential. It's just it's our place, you know. That like it's bad for normal stuff, you know. Like, or in a sense, you know, it's harder for the sun and the moon and business as usual. But this is witchcraft central here.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I did like what you said too about like the horseradish and cayenne and rousing Mars.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just welcoming Mars back, almost like.
Right, because that's when Mars comes out of shadow finally. Right, you know, when this couple days after Venus goes retrograde. So, and that's part of the whole initiation thing that we're talking about. It's like right when there's this new moon, there's this initiation like connotation, but it's a hard initiation. We also get new action is suddenly possible. So
yeah, like our warrior's not walking backwards anymore; it's walking forwards now with us. Like,
yeah, he's returned and he's like, all right, I'm ready to go. The car's running, you know, truck's running. Let's go, you know.
Yeah, so honoring him, good idea.
And then Mercury exits Libra and heads into Scorpio the next day. And you were talking about Shazandra.
Yeah.
And I thought this is really interesting about Solanum dulcamara.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just such a gorgeous plant, and you'll just see it all in the waysides. The beautiful, some people call bittersweet. Bittersweet is the name of a lot of different plants. So definitely look up Solanum dulcamara.
It's also called woody nightshade and creeping nightshade.
Mm-hmm. Has that beautiful purple flower that with a kind of yellow center that turns into the green berry and the bright red berry again. Of course, not the berries that we're eating, but just it helps cure vertigo, dizziness. It just helps with those kind of feelings of being in these other realms. So having it around, having bouquets of it around is a really good idea this time of year.
Yeah, I've had a lot of experiences with this. It's one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. It's like this is your bad girl, you know, and like, and it's obvious. Like it's like this. Like you look at her as like with her like berries, whether it's in the phase where they're green or yellow or red, like they change over. And that's another cool thing about it. Like depending on what time of year, the berries are really different color.
Yeah.
And then like the evil looking like purple flower and like the like it's like this vine and
and the roots are amazing. They kind of like waver along and they keep going. They're really long. It's hard to get them all out.
Oh yeah.
And the smell is just like this kind of like mousy, like underground smell.
Totally, yeah. It's full on nightshade, underworld. Like, it has tropane alkaloids, so it has the same alkaloids that datura has in it, or mandrake. And so, yeah, I've hung out with this one a lot, and I really was glad that you brought it in. And of course, this one's totally toxic, can totally paralyze you, kill you, put you in a coma if you like go too wild with it. But I've made tincture with it and taken it. And there was one night that a friend and I were just getting used to taking that a lot and trying to not to just be like, well, this isn't just for like special times. Like, what does it feel like to actually just live with this plant like all the time? So we were just kind of hanging out, sitting on a couch taking it. And we had this coffee table that just had a big mirror as the top of it. And I looked, and there's this statue. It's like an Easter Island like funerary spirit statue that like this wooden statue. I forget what they're called, but there's a lot of them out there. And it was on its little stand that it stands on, and on next to us on a shelf. And behind it was one of our cats, a black cat, and it was pushing it, like it was like kind of just like rocking it and pushing it. And one of us saw the cat. And the other one saw the statue moving, but we didn't like, you know, it was like we had to like make our vision was split between the two of us. and it happened too fast to do anything about it, and it finally pushed it enough, and this like funerary statue with this big round head like just dived through the mirror that we were sitting in front of. It was like an octagonal shaped mirror, and it shattered. But we'd been like taking this like Solanum dulcamara for hours, just sitting there talking, you know. And it was amazing. It was like this like funerary spirit black cat shattering mirror kind of like fractalized universe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That like definitely is like a
It's perfect.
Which I partly bring up is that like this is Venus we're talking about like in retrograde. So it's fully okay if it doesn't mean anything besides being completely aesthetically delicious. You know? So allow yourself to go there, and I like this plant for that purpose. It turns on some Venus for me, some dark Venus.
Yeah,
have fun with it, but just be careful.
Venus. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I could tell like a bunch of other stories. Oh yeah, there's another time where I like I made nightshade datura candies with maple brittle, and I hadn't opened my jar of Solanum dulcamara like tincture with the berries still in it for like 7 years or something, you know, or like 6 years, and like I opened it, and instinctually, like when you open jars, you just smell it. But it off-gassed all of this like Solanum dulcamara, and I had to call Bonnie and be like, hey, just so you know, like the floor is about like chest level right now. Like you better come home. You know? I need a little assistance. And just surprise you're like having a nightshade experience, you know, like and then I also had another surprise one with this, which is funny because it's creeping nightshade, right? And so like this other kind of accidental Solanum dulcamara experience where I just draped myself in a bunch of it before we performed, and I had been like out talking to people, sit like, you know, in the audience and hang out with people, and was just kind of fooling with the berries and with the leaves in my fingers for like an hour and a half, and then I got that like datura nightshade like complete dry mouth, like I was like, oh no, like, you know, like here we go, you know. Which, yeah, we could do a whole episode about nightshades, but definitely like look into your mandrakes and your tropane alkaloids and your daturas here, and check out Solanum dulcamara. She's often just growing in the ditch and the wayside and the hedge. But yeah, don't run into her and eat her. Just check her out and see like what you do. You know, do some research, do a background check on her. So, the Venus-Mars square, is that what we're talking about now? Yeah.
Yes. Mars moving in the second decan of Aquarius, squaring Venus and Scorpio. So, I was thinking Damiana would be really great for this. In the past, it was used to reach meditative state during tantric sex rites. I think probably going into the present, and I think these two combined are just the Venus and Scorpio, Venus and Mars combined, just to me scream Damiana. Yeah.
No, I thought that was really good that you put reaching the meditative states during tantric sex rites, because I kept thinking about this as like a sexual storm, you know, like, and that for some people that's going to be actually sex, you know, or like sexual desire, and that's one of the dangers of these Venus retrogrades is they can since they like make you love what you don't normally love and not love what you do normally love, there's like the total potential for flings with people that become like completely mistakes or destructive or just more trouble than they're worth.
Right.
And the completely the potential to be like, I don't find my partner attractive. I found this person attractive, you know, which, you know, like do it thou wilt, right? But like but as an astrologer, like the advice is always has to be like, just don't make any relationship status, or if you're gonna like get down, if you're gonna channel, you want to channel Mars's energy always in Mars transits, and channeling it into sex is a great way, especially in this case as it's Venus and Mars. But I would probably stick to your primary and like and like not like branch out for this period. Just
Damiana is a great way to do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally.
Like I don't really feel attracted right now, and then have a lot of Damiana, then maybe the attraction will start coming forth.
Keep it in the family, as they say. Because it can just, like, you see this over and over, like that's what people get in trouble with these Venus retrogrades, is like getting themselves in like romantic or sexual affairs that end up being like totally a problem for them, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, the Damiana, like, great advice, like kind of like plan it out, figure out what you're going to do with this sexual energy, even if that's like do a painting, you know?
Yeah.
Like, or like lift weights or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever does the trick, you know.
Digging a giant hole.
Yeah, dig a giant hole.
Sit in it.
And sit in it, yeah. Carve a pumpkin, you know. And sit in it.
All right. Then on October 11th, that was the 10th. The 11th, Sun in Libra squares Pluto in Capricorn. So I guess I continued on with Damiana and red berries here.
Right, which is great. It's just another point to focus on the like red berry garlands, you know, like along the way, if you want to mark down like, oh, this is like perfect red berry activity day, like October 11th. Then Mercury joining Venus in Scorpio. Is this actually the conjunction on this day? I have it written in the Yep, yeah, October 15th, 4:30 p.m., Mercury conjunct Venus. Yeah, this is definitely another activity point, especially for the journaling. This is like, Mercury is like thinking about Venus. Like Mercury is like, is being like, Venus, any messages for everybody? You know, like Mercury's like, Venus, take the mic, you know?
Yeah.
Which does two things. It allows us to think about what Venus is doing, but it also clouds our thinking with what Venus is doing. So this is definitely a time where you want to hit the journal, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and wormwood, mugwort, and then going more into more of the poison plants. Mandrake, I'm recommending here European mandrake, and henbane.
Yeah, so we're going like full flying ointment.
Right.
Like plants here.
Right.
Full poison garden, all your banefuls. You know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's time for them.
And wormwood, too, on the top of it, you know, which makes sense because we're talking Venus, and wormwood is like the primary plant to go seek the muse, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Artemisias. But yeah, I mean, Hercules was wearing a henbane crown when he went into the underworld. Mm-hmm. It's also has been used for twilight sleep, that kind of anesthetic qualities for childbirth in the past. And
wait, that's what they call that in like midwifery?
Yeah.
Is twilight sleep?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. And people, you know, would be attracted to it. Like people would be blindfolded and cover their ears. It's almost like the deprivation tanks now.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing to think about. Like not only like water birth, but like deprivation tank birth.
Twilight sleep.
Twilight sleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like a good business angle, you know.
Yeah. And then, but there was also a doctor in 1922, Dr. House, that was using the scopolamine, which is an alkaloid in henbane,
right.
for a truth serum. So it kind of like causes forgetfulness. Like a lot of the dead will be wearing henbane crowns to help them forget the life on Earth.
Right.
And henbane will be planted on graves to protect people from traveling spirits, but also to help the dead to forget.
Right.
But it also, the paradox of plants being like that full spectrum, so it also on one hand causes forgetfulness, and on the other hand causes
Wow.
remembrance.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's really interesting because those alkaloids are like disassociative.
Yeah.
You know, so like you think you're doing
Completely.
one thing, but you're doing a complete other thing. That's like the danger, you know? And it's not exactly like a psychedelic experience. It's like a disassociative experience.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So you've like lost your way. Like yeah, it makes sense. It's interesting. Like when speaking to spirits of the dead, like in your ancestor practice, you'll find that they're often like, the stuff they'll want to talk to you about. You're like, oh, I got my grandfather on the phone, and he's just like, I want a newspaper, you know? And you're like, okay, I'll get you a newspaper. And then he's like, is the water running in the slop sink in the basement? And you're like, you're like, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's not, you know? And he's like, all right. You know, like there's like you're saying, like they still like are concerned with the same bullshit that they, you know, that like, yeah, to help them forget and probably help them just move on
Exactly.
at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So these are, of course, toxins. So once again, do your research, be wise. But they're great allies for the underworld work.
Yeah, then we got Mercury trining Neptune and Pisces on the 19th, and he can get like really confused. I like what you said about pine. Just kind of simmering on the wood stove or on the kitchen stove or drinking some pine needle tea. I thought that was really smart to like call upon the sun and the moon at that point to kind of get perspective, because they're trining in air, they're in air signs, you know, so they're like mental. So you're like, oh, I'm really confused now, like because of, and you can also use it for if you want to go into full poetic fantasy mode, you know, just reach for the absinthe again. But if you want to clear your mind, reach for the pine tea.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. There's some options here.
Yeah, you can go one way or the other, or both.
Yeah.
Then stuff like moves along pretty fast at this point. At least like, or no, actually in actuality, it's moving pretty slowly. Like Venus is creeping,
Right.
but that's why we're not getting a lot of aspects. So we kind of jump ahead to the 21st, where Venus enters combustion. So she's getting close enough to the sun, and this is what we were talking about in Nana's journey, where she's having to remove the veils. This is like, because when Venus goes retrograde, she meets the sun and has a kazemi and then gets purified. You know, so this is the moment where she starts removing veils and starts like saying like things about the past that I used to love that don't serve me anymore. I can get rid of those. Where you start like kind of being like, I actually don't like that anymore, so I don't need it in my life, you know?
Yeah, and black cohosh is one of the best allies for that. Semicifuga racemosa, of course, it's a at-risk medicinal herb, so you either want to grow your own or know your grower.
What's that mean?
At risk, it's been over-harvested in its natural setting.
Oh, okay.
And so people are wildcrafting it.
And that's
too
calamus?
much. Black cohosh.
That's black cohosh. Okay.
Yeah. So I call upon it, in small doses, but it's a sun-ruled herb, but it's such an underworld herb. It has those dark roots. Like I use it for kind of underworld journeying. It's like one of my top allies for that.
Which I think makes a lot of sense. Like it's just an older idea where we think of like sun, life, bright. You know, it's light out. Dark. Like that's like it must be Saturn or something. But like since the sun comes up into the sky every day and then goes down below the horizon every night, it was seen as like the primary psychopomp. Like older kind of incarnations of Apollo were like completely chthonic. Like there was chthonic Apollo and chthonic Dionysus, and then
sense.
or like Ra. Like the Egyptian like solar like kind of centerpiece deity is like his whole mythology is all about going to the western lands and going through like in the boat like across the sky and then in the boat like to death to the underworld. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, It does, because it's also those gorgeous white flowers of black cohosh, that intoxicating smell. It's almost like they're these celestial star flowers that spire up on these like flexible, strong stalks with this kind of gorgeous like foliage that almost looks like these gorgeous like petticoats, just like protecting and causing balance. But it's one of our allies for really deep depression. Brings up that from the underworld, that maybe some of our shadow stuff that really we can find out how it's our strength with the help of black cohosh. But always with black cohosh, you want to have a support system, therapists, friends, whatever, if you're going through that, because it brings up a lot of stuff that's hard to face.
Yeah, it's like the real shadow work.
Yeah,
and so this is the time for it. I mean, this is like, I don't want to say like it's our last chance to do your shadow work, like, but this is the end of Jupiter's time in Scorpio, so it's time to like think like, well, what did Jupiter pull up? If you haven't already, or if you haven't just like thought of it concretely or like verbalized it to yourself, like, just be like, well, what did get like churned up that I can process now?
Yeah.
And it makes sense, like the sun, and when you're doing like a lot, if someone has to do a lot of Saturn remediation, it's good to also do a lot of solar remediation at the same time, like if your sun is not super, that wouldn't necessarily be the case if you had like the sun in Leo in your chart, but say you have the sun in Aquarius and you also have Saturn like somewhere where you want to do Saturn remediation, you're going to want to balance the light and the darkness, like the completely cold sober with like the vital, like so yeah, that like I see black cohosh kind of sitting in that space,
And then calamus as well, being a sun-ruled plant, but it's that swampy Acorus calamus that lives in the swamp. And I love that the Sanskrit name is vacha, means invocation, or the power that resides in the voice.
Yeah, wow.
So it helps, even helps like singers who are having hard time singing, anyone who's having a hard time finding their voice or grasping words because they have some kind of nervousness or anxiety about it.
And you say it like brings forth the bright yang of consciousness.
Yeah.
So both those things, it's funny because calamus root is the plant that pleases Rahu, who is the north node. And the north node is like just, essentially it's like a big hungry head, just like a mouth that just wants to bite more into manifestation. So that like mouth singing bright yang, like is very like very Rahu, but it's, you can see how like that would be handy in this situation,
Definitely. And that it grows in that swamp. It's a worming and drying bitter, so it knows how to live in wet dampness, and it knows how to from that it offers this warmth and drying.
So it knows how to exist where Venus is going right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's also sacred to Hecate. Which
is also interesting because I've been kind of playing around in my mind and in my personal practice with because there's no like really good remediation rites and rituals. It just wasn't, as far as I can tell, it wasn't focused on in the Western tradition of magic. Austin Coppock brought to my attention in a class, he mentioned that the headless rite is probably good for Rahu remediation, like the head is too important, like the head is too like big, it's like biting too much, it's like you're getting too big headed, do the headless rite, like take your head off, and I think that was like relayed to him through because from dreams that he was having that he related to his Jyotish teacher. So it's like connecting the Western and Eastern traditions and kind of talking shop, which is really cool. That can happen, but other than the headless rite, like what do we do about nodal work? And I started getting me to think about like Hecate and the luminaries and Hecate and the nodes and the triple nature of Hecate, and like it really seems like Saturn and the nodes are kind of this heavy gang, like they intertwine with each other in the way that their transits snake across your life. It is like, and in like Hecate invocations they talk about how she holds the staff given to her and engraved by great Kronos himself. And that, like, when you think about the staff with the snake entwining it, and if, that's very mercurial, but it's also like, that's literally like what it looks like when you follow like Saturn's transits across someone's life and then superimpose like the nodal transits. It looks like the nodes snake around the steady staff of Saturn,
wow.
you know, like kind of in this, if you modeled it that way. So
Yeah.
it definitely interests me. And maybe if this like clicks anything with anyone else, like to start thinking about like Calamus, Rahu, Calamus, Hecate, what are we talking about? You know?
Yeah. I like that
Because there's like there's old ideas of like what is the trio? You know, is it like sky, earth? You know, the triple goddess, right?
Right.
Is it sky, earth, and ocean? Is it like the heavens, the earth, and the underworld? And then you see this trio a lot in older texts of like the sun, the moon, and Saturn, because you get like the sun, like you get like Leo, Aquarius, Cancer, Capricorn, and so in the thema mundi across from each other, you get the luminaries and Saturn signs,
Right.
you know, and so there's that other like kind of triple, and and then if we're talking both luminaries, we're like kind of already talking the nodes, you know, like if Saturn presents like, hey, tough shit, you know, like him saying that to the nodes, I mean to the luminaries, is like, hey, tough shit, eclipse, you know what I mean? Like when Saturn's the sun and the moon, he makes them like go dark, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, another tangent. Thank you for listening. So then we're talking Mercury sextiling Pluto and the sun, and then shortly after, the sun finally ingressing into Scorpio.
Yeah, so I was really, I started to listen to Penderecki a lot lately, and I was feeling like his work is really like this.
Yeah, I didn't know who that was, and I looked it up when you sent me the notes, and I was like, Penderecki, huh, who's this? And I Googled the name, and the first thing that, the only thing, it was like one of those things, people play that, I forget what it's called, it's like a game, where like, can you like put in something, and you only get one Google result in return,
yeah.
You know, I forget what it's called, but like, you can gamble on it, but it sent one result, and it just said unnerving, intense, blood-curdling, sinister, dramatic.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. It's like soothingly all of that.
And so is the album called Cosmognia?
That's one of his symphonies.
Pieces?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But he has a lot. But yeah, listen to him right now. That's really gonna help you
understand at least. Yeah.
But then I was having this, ashwagandha came to me in my dream, and I've just, as kind of an underworld guide, and it just seems like that kind of calming adaptogen, just ready for anything, but has really that calmness to it. Also with Thania somnifera, there's that underworld kind of sleep again.
Yeah.
I like how ashwagandha, ashwa meaning horse and gandha meaning the smell, tells of the earthly odor of the horse. So they always talk about the stamina and strength of a stallion with ashwagandha.
That was really interesting to me, because it made me think about how we were talking before about nightmares.
Yeah.
And how it's like the mare, you know, the mare at night, like who, you know, is like kind of like bucking and frothing in your room, and that's like the sleep paralysis, like fever, sweat, like night terror, succubus experience.
Yeah.
You know, like the hag on your chest, and the nightmare, you know, like that she rides. But you know, this is stallion, and so I was like, oh well, a mare is the female and the stallion's the male. But then I was like, but it's in the succubus experience, she's stealing your stallion vitality. Like that's what she's there for.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
Completely.
yeah, I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, so ashwagandha is just a wonderful ally in general for increasing one's life force, and for anyone who's weak after an illness or But yeah, so a calm warrior kind of ally.
Yeah, and when I think Hindi and I think horse, I think Vimalananda, like Robert E. Svoboda, the Agora series. Have you read those?
No, I haven't
So
yet.
yeah, book suggestion. Like if you're into Hindi and you're into horses, pick up. There are 3 of them: Agora 1, 2, and 3 by Robert E. Svoboda. Definitely like some of the most entertaining stuff you'll probably ever read. Okay, so October 24th, Venus in Scorpio, sextiles Saturn in Capricorn. That's all we got for that day?
Yeah.
So that's, it's just a sextile, but since Venus is so important right now, it's definitely a thing.
Yeah. So I was just imagining kind of taking some of the things you've been receiving from the underworld, physically or non, and maybe adding them to some Venusian herbs and burning them, kind of starting the send forth, starting the transformation.
Yeah, and this is like, at this point, when I kept saying like part of what this is about is like figuring out what really gets you off, like figuring out what you're horny for, and that's of course metaphorically and literally, like I'm saying that both ways at once. And it's interesting at this phase of it, Venus is, a sextile is like one planet is willing to work hand in hand with the other, or willing to collaborate with the other. So this like kind of like Venus what we've rediscovered is actually what gets us off, willing to work hand in hand with like Saturn, like so it definitely has like a kind of like, here's my new fetish, like bondage time, but also kind of like how can I fit that into my life, and so like how can I fit that into like what's legal or whatever, and that's almost like a little like foreshadowing of her return to Libra finally, where like here's I've reconnected with my true my true erotism, and like I'm just gonna dive into like my fetishes. And when she hits Libra, she's like, but I still want to be socially acceptable in some sense. I can't just be a freak, or, I have to, if that's true, I have to find the freak culture, the culture aspect of Libra, So this like October 24th is it's a kind of like, here's my deep desires, and then here's what they look like working with reality,
Yeah, exactly. And then it's also the full moon in Taurus, which is 1 degree away from Uranus, away from Uranus and Taurus.
Yeah.
So it's same day. So it's really nice that Venus is sextiling Saturn at this time. I think that's a real gift, because this full moon is not an easy full moon.
Yeah, it holds it down. Yeah, and the full moon, like, it's interesting because it's like you're suggesting like herbs that support the kidneys and the lungs, and if they support the kidneys and the lungs, then they correspond to Mercury. They do some sort of Mercury medicine in some sense, and Mercury is the best at dealing with Uranian turbulence. So like it's a good time to maybe engage in an ecstatic rite of some sort, or some sort of ecstatic experience, but that's like safe enough, and that's where the Saturn comes in. It's like, okay, yeah, let's divide up and eat the rest of the mushrooms we have. Let's just like go whole hog, but like let's make sure that we like take all the bullets out of the guns and like lock them in the car or something before we do so.
Yeah. Like some real singing, like glossolalia,
Yeah,
just like,
glossolalia. Yeah,
would be
totally.
really Uranus would love it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, make up a language, speak in tongues. But just make sure that maybe put your phone in the drawer.
Yeah, hatchet's hidden.
Hatchet's hidden. Yeah, that's what we call it up here. It's a hatchet's hidden kind of night. Okay, so then we get the inferior conjunction of Venus and the Sun.
Yeah, so I recommend it's still some ashwagandha for stallion strength.
Yeah, and that's one of our big like when we're talking about journeying, path working, whatever you call it, and journaling afterwards, this is like the kind of the key one, you know. And conjunctions are the inferior conjunction you want to get exactly at the moment, because and you want to be like kind of already in your meditation state, like, so you kind of want to be like, I'm going to be meditating already, and then the conjunction is going to happen during my journey or during my meditation, and then I'm going to come out of it afterwards, and then I'm going to go right down, because this is literally the moment that we get the information, you know. This is like Venus's psychopompic kind of exchange. And so do you have the exact time on that? Oh yeah, 10:15 a.m. on October 26th. So you want to kind of get ready, get prepared beforehand so that you're deep in your zone at 10:15 a.m. And you can prepare with ashwagandha. And then what do we have going on? Then the sun sextile Saturn the next day, which is good. You know, after this ecstatic experiences and these deep meditations, then we get grounded.
Yeah. And I was thinking rosemary for remembrance and just really nourishing and uplifting.
Yeah. And
clarity.
We're really we're out of the woods at this point, essentially, you know?
Yeah.
Like, on the 27th, we get Mercury conjoining Jupiter. That's another, like, bust out your journal. So it's kind of like, at this point, it's already kind of happened, and you're just kind of collecting yourself and making sure that you're processing and understanding the retrograde and the whole year. And so you were calling on hyssop?
And dandelion. You could also do some mercury herbs like fennel, fenugreek. But I was just thinking Jupiter just having so much experience in Scorpio, just being kind of the leader, like the expounder, and Mercury really being like the scribe. Yeah,
that's a really good idea. Yeah, it's totally like guru and scribe situation. So it's like, yeah, see what the dark guru has been up to for the past year, and then have the scribe write it all down and be that scribe, you know, be that Mercury.
Yeah.
It's a Monday. It's not Mercury day, but you might want to target Mercury hours. And then we get Halloween. And that's when Venus returns to Libra, which is interesting. Because I always, like, when I'm doing metaphors for Libra, stuff happening in Libra, especially when Venus is there, I'm always, like, make the situation like a big ball or a gala, you know? Like, that's like, she's able to kind of, like, make it a charming time and make, like, whoever's there to make the sociality, like, work out. Like, a lot of times, like, at a get-together at a party, even if there's people there you don't like, you're not going to make it all about your conflict with that person, so that, like, you're not dragging the vibe of the party into that conflict place, you know, like, and so it's that ability to kind of be nice and be at a party. But after this whole, like, kind of inversion of what we like and what we do, and trying on our fetish costumes over the month of October, on October 31st, Venus returns to Libra, and it's like a night where we wear costumes anyway, you know? So it's an opportunity for you to test drive your new fetish gear that you want to incorporate into, like, your personality. Yeah. Be like, well, I can wear it tonight as kind of like an experiment, you know? Be like, how do people like me in this, you know, in this shade, you know? Like, can you, like, maybe it's like they don't know that it's not actually Halloween, you know, for you. Like, and that might be what everybody's doing, you know. So be interesting. Like, watch what costumes people choose. You might get some sexual information about them.
Take notes.
Yeah, take notes. Yeah.
Have a notebook on hand that night.
Totally. And then the expose comes, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, I just said keep on with the red berries. Thorns maybe can be put aside for now. Right.
Yeah, when she moves back into Libra, we can. I said when she leaves Libra before, is like we're not playing nice anymore. And so when she returns to Libra, we learn to play nice again, you know? So that's maybe the time where you want to dispose of, or leading up to it, dispose of your witch bottle contents and retire your thorns and just, and kind of just, like, seek equilibrium again.
Yeah. Licorice is a great harmonizer, ruled by Mercury, so that's also a great guide.
Yeah, that's a great Mercury remedial herb, like, you know, like calming the throat and...
Yeah. The stomach and...
Okay, well,
yeah.
I guess that brings us to the end.
Yeah.
Thanks for following us along, and safe travels. You know, like, keep a journal, keep your allies at your side.
Get your costume ready.
Get your costume ready. Yeah, start like...
Carve your pumpkin.
Carve your pumpkin.
Climb in it.
Yeah, climb in it, yeah.
Come out.
Yeah, and then come out. Yeah.
Climb your costume in your pumpkin.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, this is like the coming out of the pumpkin ball, you know. Okay, thanks. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.